So I found a quiet patch here, out in nature, somewhat protected from the wind. And I've been meaning to do a bunch of self-dialogue because I've written a lot in the last while. But it seems my attention gets called to things like beauty and nature. Like yesterday I was making the video and then this tiny caterpillar caught my attention. And it was so cute, and I spent at least half an hour with it. And then I spent an hour editing the video I took. So an hour of my time of that day was taken up by this tiny caterpillar, and I felt like I could have spent even more time with that caterpillar. And I hear something walking this way, and I just want to make sure it's not a bear or something. So I'll stand here for a second. But then today, just as I found my little spot here, I sat down, and that's the spot. And I looked at the tree and there was a bunch of ants, and I thought, oh, well, that'd be cool to film with my macro lens. So I did. And then I put it away, and then I looked back, and with my regular eyes, I could see that the ants' little bums were having light shine through it. They were looking transparent. And I thought, oh, it must just be the way the sun is shining. And so I was wondering if I could capture that. And so I started to capture that, and it looked kind of like the light was shining through it, and that's what was happening. But then I realized that they were actually lighting up their bum and changing the color from a gradient to totally lit to totally dark. And they were communicating with each other. And I've never heard about ants communicating in this way, though it's likely that people who study ants know this. And so I recorded them rhythmically lighting up their bums to communicate to each other, and also colliding with each other, and there was definite intricate communication going on there. And it was just so beautiful and fascinating, and I recorded it. I don't know how well it captured it, but that's the thing, that it seems like the brain gets drawn more and more into beauty. I wouldn't say drawn more and more into it, that makes it sound like it's a distraction, whereas really what is all around us is infinite beauty of nature and even of humanity, partially. And then there's this tiny little fragment that is the unbeautiful ways that humanity has programmed itself to act out of these beliefs and scarcity and everything. one thing that's not scarce is the beauty of nature. But we've turned our attention away from that in favor of things like technology. And I'm not against technology, I'm not against anything, but all I'm trying to say is there is this infinite beauty that the concept of scarcity doesn't exist. And that's an infinity available at each moment. But we've been hypnotized into turning our attention away from that. And it's not just about frolicking in beauty all day long. That's not what I'm saying. But it's almost like our brains are so out of tune with it that we can't even tune into it at all. The fact that I was able to spot this tiny caterpillar on my leg without even really seeing it or looking at it closely. I just said it out loud, "Is that a tiny caterpillar?" And then I had to look. Whereas if I would have just seen this little black thing moving, I would have thought it was a disgusting little bug and flicked it off or something. But I don't find any bugs disgusting necessarily. But so it seems like part of this thing is going in and out of beauty. And I think when the perception of enough beauty is channeled through the nervous system, through actually seeing it and being with it and witnessing it and being in wonder of it, I think that's part of what might spur this distress, because the nervous system is more attuned to beauty, so it then has the sense to release more of the holograms stored in the nervous system and brain, and that can be distressing. And it's not a conscious process. It's almost like when we absorb enough beauty subconsciously or subjectively, then we're processing some of the non-beauty through us. And the thing is, oftentimes when we're in distress, we're met with moving towards being psychiatrized and going back into society and the systems that aren't beauty. But when we're in the beauty, we feel it and we know it, and we don't know how to speak that to those who don't see it and feel it. And then we can actually get quite distressed because we're going back into societal programs, and not just for us as in a me that wants to be here loving the beauty and all that. It's as a system of humanity. Just like the ants are communicating something by flashing their bums, people are communicating by flashing in distress, and it's not about the me. The ants aren't talking about me. They're communicating as a whole. And so we're not communicating as a whole of humanity. And so people that go into beauty, when they're coming back, because you can't really remain there because not everybody's there, then we're walked towards psychiatry instead of being received non-judgmentally to be able to process some of that pain. And it might not even be a matter of people who go into that consciousness being like, "I have all the messages for you, society, and now listen to me." It would be even just more being able to be supported through processing those energies, because we're processing those energies for the whole. And maybe it isn't even a matter of one is better than the other. It's just a matter of some people are really processing it and feeling it and sensitive to these other energies and frequencies and sounds and noise and everything. And really, people who are doing that should be honored for their ability to process some of this stuff and kind of keep quiet about it and let people who don't sense this go about their life and their business and whatever they want to do. It would be wonderful if one day people who went through these processes were seen more as having a unique place in society to really be able to sense things, and supporting a person to learn that language. Because again, that language isn't even about us as people who go into that state and them as people who don't. We don't need everybody to go into that state all the time. But it is a unique brain state. I feel it is a unique neural tribe. And the fact that there's a lot of research going on about all these different altered states of consciousness, but people who go there because they're sensitive to things. Their whole being is just sensitive. It's not like you can make your being sensitive. You can't say, okay, now be sensitive. No, just the universe makes some people sensitive in order to process some of these things and also support society in being able to move towards other meanings such as beauty than just these mechanized things like technology. And that's the thing, it's going from a living state, which is very feeling and alive and embodied, to being chemicalized back into this mechanized way of being. And it seems like one is just this living state and the other is this sort of robotic state. And that robotic state is necessary, and it's not necessarily bad. We have to be so-called robotic in certain ways when we drive a vehicle and we learn, but we've become robotic in how we drive our consciousness. And then the people who go into those states where all of a sudden they're released from that robotic control of consciousness, that contrived consistency, well, their pathologist says something's wrong with your brain, when really we've just been released from that consistent program that we all believe in society. So anyways, I'm really having a sense of these things, and I have different senses of things all day long, but it's hard to really capture all of it. It seems like there's a world where we're moved by consciousness itself, and then a world where we're moved by thought, and everything in between. But thought isn't something living, but it has control of our living energy. And when that control is released, it takes a while to actually adapt to it. It's like the next adaptation. It's like natural selection. And not all of us who go into those states of consciousness make it. And yesterday, when I was editing the video, I was noticing how drugged I looked and how bloated my face looked. And it probably looks still kind of bloated for sure. But I think that those extra medications sort of slow down one's voice. And it's even in the facial structures and how it sort of inflames and bloats the face. And this morning I took another one. Something over there. I took another 1 tablet of the Hearty Nutritionals, and then for lunch I took another 1. And at dinner time I will take 2. And I'm feeling better today. I'm feeling not as much like something is being held in. So hopefully that could mean that I'm on the mend and that blocking it was a good idea. It was definitely a good idea, but I'm hoping that the blocking didn't make it so I'm going to have to constantly block something, versus when it gets to the peak, gets somewhat out of control, then I know that it's just tapering off. So between feeling better today, that's a good sign. Last night I took 1 Seroquel and 2 Trazodone instead of the night before I took half a Trazodone and 3 Seroquel. Somehow my brain just didn't quite compute what to do. So I will definitely keep going with that. And I wore my heart rate monitor, and I'll show you what it looks like when I'm falling asleep. And I don't have the comparisons to the nights before when I was actually really in more distress because I wasn't wearing it. But wearing it actually feels like somewhat of a security I don't know why, even though it's not really going to do anything, but maybe it's almost a gesture of saying to my heart, okay, I'm going to pay attention to you. I know that you're stressed. I'm going to measure